Welcome back to Bumblebee viewers for today's video on the top 10 strange superstitions that guided ancient lives. Superstition number 10 will be Haruspicy. So, people have tried to predict the future for centuries, but the ancient Etruscans got a little sloppy and gross with it. Haruspicy meant instead of busting out a crystal ball or holding hands around an altar, you would crack open an animal like an oxen, a sheep, or chickens, and sacrifice them to the gods, then gutted them to create a connection with the heavens. This made the entrails a medium for messages from the gods. How they land when dumped out of the animal's abdomen cavity would tell you anything from the weather tomorrow to if the king's about to be poisoned. Each organ was analyzed based off of appearance individually, so smooth, rough, shriveled, etc., which determined the outcome of the divination. The liver was the most important part of divination process because it was believed to contain the animal's soul. While only a Haruspice, aka a Haruspicy priest or priestess, could fully interpret the meaning behind the entrails, there were some details that anyone could look for, such as a bump on the liver to predict a favorable outcome. Every portion of the animal's entrails was believed to have a deeper meaning, so it took someone with extensive experience to make the full predictions. Superstition number 9 is break the wishbone. Breaking the wishbone, which is the furcula bone found in fowls such as turkey, duck, partridge, or chicken, comes up at Thanksgiving a lot. But did you know that people have been making wishes on poultry bones since around 700 BC? The Etruscans, yes, them again, believed that the bird could tell the future, similar to how animal guts could, and by drying out that bone and then stroking the frugal bone, they could grant the power of foresight and make wishes come true. It was a feature of almost everyone's home to have these dried bird bones just littered around, as they were considered precious and worth saving from any fowl you consumed. Jewelry was made in the shape of wishbones, and you can still find pendants today in its shape. When the Romans adopted this superstition, they began cracking the bone in half to spread luck. Naturally, as you know from the tradition today, the larger half determines the stronger favor of whose side after it breaks. Eventually, breaking the bone became an act that also grants wishes. Superstition number 8 is hairy as a goat. This unique superstition comes from Rwanda, where for centuries upon centuries, goat has been served up in a slew of deliciously spiced dishes that women supposedly cannot eat unless they're willing to pay the price of unwanted facial hair. According to this old superstition, women who eat goat meat will start to grow hair on their faces and develop a stubborn attitude. Interestingly enough, this superstition does not apply to the local men since they already have facial hair and are apparently already super stubborn natured. So I guess the point of the superstition is if one part of our population's already like this and we hate it, it's already enough. But some people believe that this superstition originated with some hungry men who simply didn't want to share their goat meat. You may be thinking there's some people out there who must not follow this. Not really. The superstition is so driven in Rwanda that women simply just don't eat goat meat at all. There was a similar superstition in Nigeria's past where women from some parts of the southeast were prevented from eating gizzard meat from fowl for pretty much the same logic and reasoning. However, unlike the goat meat in Rwanda, which is still followed today, that gizzardy one did die out a bit more. Superstition number 7 is a classic. It's fingers crossed. This comes from pre-Christianized pagan West Europe, which is so long to say, when the practice of making a cross with you and the index fingers of another person was thought to concentrate the forces of good spirits and to seal a pact or a wish with the fellow crosser. However, the practice was picked up by the early Christians, who would greet and identify each other in secret with various symbols like crossing index fingers or touching thumbs, stuff like that. But anyways, before that, over time, people realized they could simply just bless their own wishes by crossing their first 2 index fingers themselves and then later simply index and middle on one hand, which is what we do today. Calling your hair girl to see if she can fit you in last minute? Fingers crossed. Waiting for that university acceptance paperwork? Fingers crossed. There's nothing that crisscrossing these little bad guys can't do for you. Except, well, give definable evidence our wishes will come true, but fingers crossed that having your fingers crossed works. Superstition number 6 is good luck grapes. Very different from good luck fingers, mostly because you eat these ones. So in Spain, there's a very long-standing ancient tradition that grapes are the secret to good luck during the new year. This tradition dates back to at the very least 1895, and it really did take off around 1909. In December of that year, some Alicante's vine growers sneakily helped spread this custom to sell huge numbers of grapes from an excellent harvest they'd had. So fun fact, the superstition comes from a minor capitalist devilish scheme. We love that. When the clock strikes midnight on New Year's Eve, Spaniards will quickly eat a grape each clock strike for a total of 12 grapes. Each grape is meant to represent a month of the year, so it's believed in doing this, it will bring you prosperity in the upcoming year. Also to ward off witches and evil spirits in general. The eating of 12 grapes is done in one of two places: at home with family members after dinner, or in the main squares around the country, the most famous being the Puerta del Sol in Madrid, where this tradition actually started, and they receive hundreds of tourists every year who want to take part of the long-standing tradition. Superstition number 5 is the lucky rabbit foot. Every time people bring these up, I think of the hilarious episode of the hit TV series Supernatural, where the spirit hunting brothers encounter a lucky rabbit's foot and learn that while they can bring great prosperity, once you lose it or someone takes it, well, they're straight up hairbringers of death. See what I did there? Did you like that one? So this belief stems from the ancient ideology of totemism, a spiritual connection between animals and humans, and it's found in hundreds of indigenous and ancient cultures. If a clan believed they descended from rabbits, or they placed a specific role in their religious beliefs, it wasn't unusual for them to carry around parts of the rabbit's body, particularly the feet. Celtic clans, for example, believed the rabbits could speak with the underground gods and spirits thanks to their burrows. The rabbit and the symbol of a foot are actually both symbols of manhood in many ancient cultures as well. Thus, it's believed carrying a rabbit's foot specifically increased your fertility, a bountiful harvest, and good fortune. When Christianization started destroying the pagan cultures, the rabbit foot was one of the many once positive pagan symbols that was taken and then demonized. The church did this with symbols like goats, altars, the Star of David, in order to gain new followers via manipulative fear-mongering. The rabbit foot became associated with witches, and the rabbits were nearly hunted to extinction because it was believed that witches take the form of a rabbit. So rabbits were killed so that their feet could be used as talismans towards them. Superstition number 4 is untrustworthy left. Ancient Romans had a widespread belief about the left-sided things. This is to do with the scales of justice and how the scales were transferable to many facets of life, seeking balance and order. Too much of one thing is imbalance, unless it was the right side, because there's never too much of the right side because it's always right. So, jokes aside, this superstition suggested that anything on the left-hand side of anything was considered evil, while anything on the right-hand side was safe and good. In fact, this goes so far that the word sinister comes from this superstition. In Latin, it means on the left side. Neat, right? Anyway, so literally, a normal everyday thing done on the left could suddenly become sinister in nature. A bird flies onto your left side. You buy bread, but the cashier accepts the money with the left hand. I'm pretty sure you could be kissing someone. If they put their tongue in the left side of your mouth, it'd mean doom and gloom is imminent. This also meant that the Romans looked at left-handed people warily, as they were believed to be untrustworthy or capable of evil things. Superstition number 3 is itchy right palm. Alright, so this ancient superstition comes from Kenya, where it's believed that the right palm of a person itches, that person is in for an inflow of cash anytime soon. So don't you dare scratch that itch, because it's believed in doing so you will scratch away the amount of money being received. If it's too itchy to handle and counting backwards from 10 or picturing Nona doing kickflips isn't distracting your brain enough, well, just scratch your left palm. This tradition is shared amongst a few other African communities, as is the belief you shouldn't cut your nails at night or, God forbid, eat from a pot of rice while cooking it if you ever want to get married. If that last one is true, consider me single for life. Superstition number 2 is the baby cheese. There is a lot of things people do to prepare for a new addition of the family. The newest ergonomic crib, the spinny over the bed stuff, footy pajamas, I don't really know, but that's what I could think of. So aside from that, there is of course making cheese, and not even like a little ball of mozzarella you whip up on your day off and post on Instagram, oh proud I made it myself. I mean a whole laborious wheel of cheddar, my guy. And old medieval superstition required families to mature a giant cheese wheel for 9 months while a woman was pregnant. Once a baby was born, the family would eat the cheese to celebrate, leaving behind the cheese rind. I imagine this would take a couple days. I don't know what a big cheese wheel is by medieval standards, but I don't think the vibe was the entire family eats an entire 15-pound wheel of cheese in one night like a weird food eating contest. But it would need to be finished within a couple days, because at the christening, which usually happened within 1 to 3 days of a birth back in medieval times, the family would do the little anoint and like water dunk and whatever, and then pass the baby through the hollowed out circle of the cheese rind. So it'd be gifted with prosperity and a long life. Okay, on to the next. Okay, so superstition number 1 is the hand of glory. This sounds super raunchy, but instead it's just disgusting and a great example of how our ancient ancestors must have been eating mold every single day, and it literally made them insane. So you know how in both Christian and Muslim beliefs, thieves back in the day had their hands cut off? Well, What do you do with a severed hand after you have one? Nowadays, we toss in medical waste. In medieval times, you could have tossed it in any pig pen and nobody would have cared. But why do that when you could make an elaborate decorative candelabra? In Europe, the severed hands of criminals were displayed like relics to prevent future grievances. Fun fact, there's still even a medieval thief's arm dangling in a Prague church. The Haunch of Venison in Wiltshire, England is a 684-year-old pub that has a famous display of a cursed gambler's hand. In most cases, the owner of the hand was not known, but it was always irrelevant anyways because the hand's display location determined the crime. Any man who publicly got the hemp necktie was also dubbed a physicalized version of the Hand of Glory during the Middle Ages because the victim's corpse would be hanging in the streets to deter others from committing crimes. Sometimes, however, the amputated hands of felons, or hands taken from these hung corpses, were used to commit crimes rather than prevent them. According to an old European belief, a candle made out of the dried severed hand of a criminal, known as a literal Hand of Glory, had supernatural powers. The Hand of Glory was a pickled right hand of a felon cut off of the body while they still hung at the gallows. It came in two forms, either a clenching hand gripping one candle in its bent fingers, or such style as the hand is at the Whitney Museum in England, where all 5 fingers are outstretched with a candle on each. The hand was used by burglars to send sleeping people in the house into a coma, from which they were unable to wake until the burglar left. If one, or the main candle in the hand, couldn't light though, it meant the house inhabitants were still awake, and the burglar needed to wait longer to strike. Thank you once again for tuning in to Bumblebee. I sure hope you enjoyed today's video. Take some time to subscribe to the Hive to see more like it, and until next time, maybe drop some likes and comments down below. Bye.